But
So did you have-
also, as rigorous as the CNI program is.
Okay. And you said it was 54?
5412.
5412. I need to go write that down. Okay.
That would be the praxis that you would need to take.
Yes. And so we had a question because we contacted the registrar's office about graduation. She said it was passed. So what do we need to do if it's passed already? Because you said you put our names on the list.
Well, you go on the add-on list. You're not graduating anyway, but you have to apply to graduate so they can charge you the $75. I've already notified them that, I've already notified Sherry. I'll zip them another email to remind them that by the time that we enroll y'all, it's already past the time to apply, since you have to apply the semester before. And we do this every time. And so I just have to remind them. I've already reminded Sherry, but I'll remind Sherry and Luann. I'll shoot them an email that.
Is there any way, Dr. Lamb, you could either copy us on the email, or if you could do like a screen share and show us where to find the add-on graduation application or like whatever it is, because
You just apply to graduate and they just have to know what program you're in.
Okay.
So is that 75 in
but-
addition to the 150 for us to graduate CNI?
Now y'all need to be careful in that. We need to remind them, y'all are not graduating from the EDCI program. You're just completing the add-on, so that they will do the SOA test and all of that and get your transcripts ready so that when you pass 5412, you can apply for your license. I have to remind them of that, because see, they're thinking that y'all are applying to graduate from the EDCI program. We have this happen all the time. It's just y'all are completing this program, and we have you apply to graduate because they have to do all the same back office stuff to have it ready so that when you apply for your license, they have to attest that y'all have done all the things and did all the coursework. And so I've already informed them and sent the list and told them, but I'll just remind them. It won't be a big deal. And I'll remind them again that y'all aren't, none of y'all are graduating this fall. If I'm correct in that. None of y'all are finishing this fall your EDCI program. So it's just so that it's just the $75 one. Now, I don't know if they'll cut you a break when you apply for the other one, where they'll just charge you the other 75 or not. They may charge you the 150 again. We can always try. I mean, the deal is the reason why that y'all pay less, they still do the same amount of paperwork and still cost the same to get the certificate from Jocelyn's as it does the diploma. The deal is y'all don't do all the regalia and all that other stuff. And so they might cut you a break. I doubt it. That's crowd dead steal pennies off a dead man's eyes. They're that cheap. So, but yeah, we can, I'll remind them that y'all are applying just to complete the add-on program.
Dr. Lamb, is the preliminary approval the same thing? Because I got an email like a while back saying it was pre-approved or pre-cleared for the school admin certification.
Yep.
Is that it? So I don't have to do anything else?
If you've applied for graduation, you're good, but make sure you have applied. That's what triggers the $75 fee that they want to charge you.
No, when I applied to graduate last week, it charged me 150 for EDCI. There wasn't an option to add this anywhere.
Right.
That's where I was, Mary. That's exactly what happened.
And so that's why I've got to remind them. I mean, they're doing it manually. Sherry knows to do it manually. I identified the 10 of y'all. I've already had to send her the completer list, and I identified y'all as the EDCIs. And I'll remind them tomorrow. That's not a big deal. I'll be on campus. I got some things to take them anyway, so I hang out with them about half the time as it is up in the registrar's office. We got so many different program variations going on. We have to try to keep everything straight. We've got this, and we've got some doctorals, and we got some accelerated into Steve's program that start in the spring, and we accelerate them in the fall, and they get one course waived, and we got several things going on. So we're always trying to make a nickel. We're always on the hustle for something or another. So it's mostly just trying to meet students' needs. And to get back to the original part, one of the original reasons why we started this add-on is that we had so many folks who weren't prepared to take the 5412. And the quirk in the system in North Carolina is you have to take 5412, even if you don't want an administrative license or you hadn't done the coursework, you got to take 5412 to get your curriculum instruction license. And it's the administrative exam, which makes no sense, but nobody ever accused DPI of making sense. And so, part of the beauty of this is you get your administrative license, you do a 12-hour block. It's not cheap, but you'll be able to pass the 50. We've not had anybody not pass the 5412 once they've been through this. Whereas if you didn't do this, the pass rate wasn't very high. It's not hard. It's just you hadn't been exposed to the material. You're being tested on something you weren't taught. The very notion of teaching to the test. Well, it's kind of important that you cover the material that's going to be on the test. And that's what we've made sure that we've done is we've aligned everything with the 5412. And so y'all should be good when you take that. Doesn't take but a minute to take it now.
I will say, Mary and I have already taken it, and I feel like I could have passed it prior to the admin add-on.
Good.
But this course did help me with several of the questions. So
Great. Yeah, I was going to say it's always good to know that I don't know that we're worth what you're paying us, but that we have some value. That we are adding some value. That is important.
Well, there were some things that I would not have been exposed to outside of this course.
And that's just it. It's the difference in making 146 on the nose and passing and making 152 or 156. But the deal is you're so close without this around that 146 mark. If you miss one that you should have got, then you don't pass and you got to do it again. So we've not had any, not wood. We hadn't had any, and none of you will have any problem. Hadn't any problems. And so, I would encourage you all to take it as soon as possible if you haven't already, before you forget this stuff. I know over the holidays you'll try to put this course out of your mind, which is not a bad thing. But go ahead and take the 5412, and trust me, if you will go to that free practice test, take it one time, you'll be ready. You don't need to spend any more money. You don't need to get a book. You don't need to be grinding it out. Trust me, if you've been through this, you'll get 4 or 5 questions you wouldn't have got previously, and what y'all already knew, y'all will breeze through. Y'all will breeze through. Do not stress. Do not spend a bunch of money. Don't pay for one of those prep courses, all that teaches you how to take tests. How to eliminate 1 or 2 choices and guess. Don't do that. Y'all already know how to do all that stuff. That's just a waste of money. Well, Dr. Laws, where are you tonight? I don't recognize it. Looks like a hotel room.
It is a hotel room. We're at the Isle of Palms at Wild Dunes, and head out for the better vacation spot of the world, Gastonia, North Carolina, tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll be home tomorrow. Everybody wants to go to Gastonia.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So we'll be heading out for home tomorrow.
I thought you might have been in a Motel 8 or whatever, where Debbie finally woke up and threw you out.
More than that, and it's very nice. And if the cord was long enough, I'd show you. It's really nice out there, and it was sunny and 72 today.
Did you play golf?
Well, I had to retire from golf, so no. But we did go to downtown Charleston and had a good time, and so all is good. All is good, but life is not as good for us as it is for Stacy after a big win over Florida. I'll tell you what,
How about them Gamecocks?
I said, you know,
It wasn't about the Gamecocks. It was about Florida quit.
it-
They
it-
did.
Yo, come on now.
come on,
Hey,
Dale.
come
big
on
quit.
now.
Give
Don't
them
What was it?
credit.
The quarterback hurt his knee
Yeah,
dancing and
yeah,
couldn't play?
whatever. Yeah,
And
and
Wake-
a frog had wings. Don't start with me.
Didn't Wake Forest quit the other night too, Dr. Laws?
Wake Forest played 3 good quarters. It's but on the good side, Carolina only scored 2 more points than Army did against Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Wake
Well-
Forest really struggles with the idea of tackling somebody.
I swear, 2 or 3 times I thought that, their flags was out. Like they were running along, looked like they were trying to pull their flags, like flag football
yeah.
at PE.
Wrapping
I
them
swear,
up
I
is
think they were out a couple times and they didn't blow the whistle.
I do want you all to know that being the great fan I am, I kind of predicted this. And so our family went to the James Bond movie instead of watching the football game. So I kind of knew how disappointed I would be.
Well,
So if you haven't seen the James Bond movie, it's a little bit disappointing too. It's not really up to par, but it was okay.
Well, I'm not bragging or anything, but I just want to let y'all know that I did go down and work with the Gamecocks during the off week. So that would be the only reason they stepped up and played Florida like they did. So,
yeah.
and their tackling was better.
Yes.
I wasn't
Any
trying
win
to
is a
tackle them
good
from the
win.
back. Yeah.
Any win is a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll take it all day.
Yeah. And so the Wolfpack didn't look good, but they won anyway. Of course, they were playing the Sisters of Mercy. But they did get through. But no, Dr. Laws and I talked about the Carolina weight game, and so we set the over under at 100, and of course it went over that. We knew that they'd just run till they got tired, that there wouldn't be any defense. That was pitiful to watch. I hate that Sam threw those 2 interceptions. That's the only thing that I hated about the ball game.
Well, it was interesting. This is the last football conversation, then we'll go on. Stacey, I am happy for the Gamecocks. That was a good win. If we're worried about Sam throwing 2 interceptions after scoring 55 points, if 55 points can't win you a football game, we're in trouble, and we're in trouble. So, I think it's a bigger problem with the defense.
Yep. Yep. I think so too.
But anyway, let's roll.
Let's go. Who's first? Shaggy Spring, let's go. We got a lot to get to tonight.
I think that's us.
So we all had case study 4, inclusive education, success for all or success for some. So a summary of the case would be, it takes place at a Chilean elementary school, which we weren't necessarily sure about because we don't know about the Chilean education system. But they have an integration program that integrates students with special needs into classrooms with peers who don't have learning difficulties. The parents are actively involved, or the Parents Association is actively involved for looking for resources and getting materials. Humberto is the president. He brings the concern to the principal, Eugenia. They are concerned that their kids are not getting, next slide, Heather, are not getting the same time or energy from their teacher, Sylvia, than the kids who have the learning, the other kids, the other group of kids. And he's like, with the kids without learning difficulties are being told that they need to help their peers who are in the integration program with their assignments. Eugenia feels total inclusion is essential to the mission of the school, takes notes of concerns, and consults Ishmael, the technical coordinator, for his guidance. And we also weren't sure about the definition of technical coordinator. So he consults with other teachers on how they handle the integration program. Eugenia meets with Sylvia to get her take on the situation and the concerns from the parents. Sylvia very passionately defends her process, saying that the collaboration is valid and students who can teach the concept have mastered it, and says that it builds confidence for kids as well. Ishmael talked to two of Sylvia's colleagues. Sergio feels that the teachers shouldn't focus heavily on the kids with special needs because the specialists should be the team that helps them progress. Rodrigo and Angelica feel like the parents are overbearing and special needs kids have rights. And with differentiated attention, everyone will be able to master basic skills. So Eugenia plans to schedule a meeting with the teachers to clear the air and address concerns.
Okay, so the first reflection question was, how might the principal approach this and future meetings with their teachers? And is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? So the first thing that we talked about having them do was to revisit the school mission. And then to also, with the integration program, revisit the role of the teacher and the role of the specialist, and made a note, Sergio mentioned that the specialists are supposed to be working more with those kids. We also wanted to make sure the principal would look at the district and the school policy regarding inclusion and that specific integration program. The principal definitely needs to be more involved in the classroom. She needs to go in and do observations and walkthroughs so that she knows what's happening. And as far as choosing one approach over the other, we thought that it is probably necessary to choose one approach over the other just for school-wide consistency. And then what is the path that Eugenia should take? Well, first we said that she needs to conduct a formal observation and post-conference with Sylvia, and then look at the student IEPs to determine the correct placement. Meet with Sylvia and discuss the difference between using students to teach and what cooperative learning actually is and looks like, and also to provide support for Sylvia with cooperative learning, but also to provide professional development for best practices for the integration program for everyone. So everybody is aware of what it's supposed to look like and what their roles are and what they're supposed to do.
So in thinking about the point of view, it's kind of looking at this from both sides of it. It seems that both points of view seem to have the best interest for a group of students in mind. Thinking about the way that Sergio was sort of looking at it, he was more concerned about students who were not a part of the integration program, whereas Rodrigo, Angelica, and Sylvia were very focused on the rights of the students within the integration program. So they both had the best, the best interest of a group of students at the center of thoughts. And the point of view I feel like that is more correct is the one that is legally correct. And that's going to take Eugenia going back to the law and the policies of the district to determine the best approach there. And in terms of collaboration with the children's families, we looked at the IDEA in 2004, and it's important to work with the families to determine the appropriate placement for the students and making sure they're in the right placement in terms of the integration program, and that's going to be part of the IEP. But also the law intends that the degree of inclusion be driven by the student's needs as determined by the IEP and not the convenience of the parents or the district or anybody else in the building. So it really should be based on the needs of the kids and not what anybody else thinks. We also talked about possibly doing a workshop for all parents to provide information on the integration program and what that looks like in the building. And then also doing data meetings with all parents to show the growth of individual students as a means to support the work that's happening.
So with Ishmael, we talked about not being really sure what that technical coordinator title was. In Jennifer's district, that's the IT person. For us in Wake, we've got people that are technology coordinators that bounce in and out of schools that help PLTs, PLCs integrate technology into lessons and into units and that kind of thing. So we thought the best way to use him would be as part of professional development. He's a former university professor. It said he has several advanced degrees. So he's got some background, but maybe not specifically with students with disabilities. So we wanted to use him more as how can he, as a technology person, help with differentiation? How can we get all kids to do and excel in different ways? We said that maybe he could do some research and then discuss the idea of least restrictive environment. Maybe he can become more familiar with what students with disabilities versus non-disabled peers would emphasize on what it would look like. And then to work with classroom teachers, I can't see the bottom of the line, to provide something. I can't see what's at the bottom of that slide. If you go to the next one.
Provide support.
Okay, support. What actions might Sylvia take with families? So we said that first, she really needs to create an action plan for how to kind of make things better, and to work with a team of teacher leaders who may be more knowledgeable in the inclusion model, to host a workshop or a curriculum night that they can then educate parents on what the inclusion model is, what it looks like, how diversity works in different classes. That she could also speak with parents to hear concerns, but not to open that up first, because that's going to open up a can of worms and just a venting session that's going to be unproductive. And then we said that she could possibly allow parents to visit classrooms to see how kids are learning after she has done professional development and better equipped the teachers to handle it.
Okay, so for the ethical and legal concerns for justice, not showing fair or equitable practices for all students, violation of FERPA, and for our care, lack of shared decision-making, pushing her responsibility off on Ishmael, because she should have been the one in there making sure, she knows what's going on in her school. Lack of nurturing and caring for success of all students. For the critique, lack of social justice awareness and lack of awareness of social class and equity for all. Profession, failure to safeguard what is right for all the students, and did not have the best interests of all students in mind. And no matter what, the principal must uphold the instructional delivery and not dispute the inclusion model. So that's what we have.
All right, go back to your, can you go back to your first slide where you had all the people listed in their roles? Okay. All right. So where do we want to begin here? All right. So we've got, okay, Umberto is the parent. And we've got, okay, go to your next slide. Okay. And one more. Okay, I got it. All right, you can stop now. Make sure we got that. All right, where to begin? Let's start with Eugenia, the principal. All right, so your role as a principal is to make sure that you carry out the laws and policies of your district. So her district, and the whole thing about it being in Chile is just to throw you off. That's immaterial. And that's an instructional facilitator or IT person, that's Ismail. So anyway, so let's start with Eugenia, the principal. All right, so your job is to follow the law and policy as Heather just said. All right, so the inclusion model. What is the inclusion model and why do we do it? That's where we, instead of putting kids in the room by themselves or grouping them, we take those kids and we put them into, we mainstream them into the regular classroom, right? And they're sitting there, and then we send the teacher in to work with them individually. All right. Did we adopt, let's think for a minute here. Did we adopt the inclusion model because we thought it was a better delivery model than what we had before? Was that the reason why? Was it, did it meet the requirement of least restrictive environment better? Or was it cheaper?
I'm gonna bet it was cheaper.
It's 30% cheaper than the previous model. And you would say, but well, you know, Dale, this course is about law and finance. Well, this is what we're talking about now. All right. So the notion here is that this delivery model is 30% cheaper. And you say, but Dale, you said EC is funded by federal government. It is. But when that money gets cut back, or the in-kind money from the district is pulled back, your dollars don't go as far as they one time did. And so we came upon this notion that we could do an inclusion model and argue in court that it met the letter of the law, but we saved 30%. And usually that's money that the district was going to, in-kind money that they were going to put in it as well. And as the federal government has not increased their budgets and the local money has waned, we simply went to inclusion, not because we thought it was a better delivery model, but because it was cheaper. Now you say, Dale, what's that? Well, again, that's part of what you've got to understand is this may not be ideal, but we're not going to change it because we don't have the money to change it. And so that's where we have to start. This is what we're going to have. So we have to make the best of the situation. And so I've had groups in the past, you know, that have said, well, what we ought to do is change this inclusion. Well, we can't. We can't afford to change the inclusion, this inclusion model. We can't afford it. And so that takes that part off the table. So we're stuck with what we got. So now let's start working through that. So we can't afford not to do this. All right. So Eugenia, so y'all pointed out, she should be in those classrooms, shouldn't she? She doesn't know what's going on in there. I mean, that's not just a problem for the inclusion model. That's a problem, period. And then when somebody came in and said, what are you doing? You know, you're not going into the rooms. What did she do? Did she go to the rooms? No. Andy's correct. That is correct, Andy. Most of them will tell you that. Yeah, a lot of the EC teachers would prefer not that model as well, but it's not about what they prefer. It's not about meeting students. It's about money. And so we can't get away from that piece. But so Eugenia didn't go to the room. She doesn't know what's going on. When the parent came, the head of the PTA came and said, you know, bad stuff's happening in the room. Instead of going, she sent somebody else. So she has completely abrogated her responsibility. So, you know, bad administrator. She's malpracticed. All right, now, so we've got all of those things. We don't know Ishmael. He's instructional facilitator. He's like MAIT. He's the your mom said fire her. Yeah, I would. You know, we're hard on teachers. We need to be hard on administrators as well. And so she's not doing the basic things. But to get back to Ishmael's role, that would be what we would call an instructional facilitator or technology facilitator, that role, that one we have for the districts. Why in the world we'd send that person? That I don't, you know, that's malpractice. I mean, she's done about everything you could do wrong here. So with her, I'm not sure we can help this principal. She refuses to go to the classroom. She refuses to go to the room. We really can't really use her. So that's the first thing we'd have to say is probably going to have to let Eugenia find something else to do. Maybe they've got a desk over at the bus garage. But that's generally what we do. You know, we do what we do. And so maybe we got a desk over at the bus garage for her, but she's going to have to go to timeout at least. So we know that. So now let's talk about Sylvia in the classroom. And I know Dr. Laws is waiting to chime in on this one. What about the notion of having the kids the AIG and the upper kids teach the other kids. What about that?
Well, one of the things that we had actually discussed as a group was that we don't know the full extent as to how that went about. We don't know if it was them actually teaching them or if it was kind of like what some of us do in the classroom where we say, turn to a partner and see if you can explain this type of problem, where it's kind of like that side by side and go over a problem together type of thing. Because I know I use that in my classroom where I turn, have kids after we've gone through something and I say, okay, now you've got one here, and then work through it and then talk to a partner and see if you understand it and or can explain it from one person to the next.
Yeah,
So
that's different.
Okay, because
Yeah,
that was what we discussed.
That's okay. What we're assuming, no, we're not assuming, we've been told that they actually, her deal is one kid teaches the other kid. And with the idea that if you know something well enough to teach it, that's the best way to learn. The problem is what about the level of the work? See, and Steve's going to chime in because he always does, and I don't blame him. Gifted kids are the most malpracticed on kids in our business. You having the gifted kid teach the EC kid 2 + 2, that's good for the gifted kid. We got to remember the notion of one kid helping another, but they're only helping them with the basic level stuff. They're stuff that they probably mastered years ago. So how is this helping them any at all? This is just warehousing them and then putting them to work to boot. So you're double malpracticing on the gifted kids to do something like this. And is it the best practice to have one kid teach another kid? All right, Steve, you're on.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this, but it's not, there's nothing profound in this statement. We worry about and should worry about meeting the needs of the exceptional child. There's no question about it. And because of IEPs, we are even more focused on trying to meet those needs. The truth of the matter is that we have committed malpractice against every other child in that classroom if that is our instructional model. And so this case, they'll save the best one for last, because there is nothing redeeming about this case. Nothing. This gives a portrait of everything that's wrong with what many schools are doing. And we should just sit there and say, okay, principal, you've got to go. I mean, somebody explain to me how the choice to supervise this classroom or at least go and observe this classroom is an ITF. I mean, that absolutely makes no sense. And I mean, ITFs are great and they perform a valuable function, but for this particular issue, I mean, it's a litany of problems, and so I smiled when I saw the order in which Dale put these cases, because I mean, this is just, it's like you said, it's malpractice, and anything that's bad that can happen to this school and this school's administration should happen, because there's nothing redeeming about it that I can find. And the children are suffering, the teachers are suffering. It's just not good. And we've talked about finance before. All of you are aware, very much aware, because we did the April head count and December head count, that even in the best of times, those numbers do not come close, or the dollars that accompany those do not come close to meeting the budgetary needs of exceptional children. So to go back and say, oh, well, the old way was so much better. Well, it is. And you know what, if we could have class sizes of 12 to 1 instead of 25 to 1, that would be so much better too. You can only do what dollars will allow you to do. So you've got to figure out the best ways to do it. in the 32 and a half years, I can't say that I witnessed a strong inclusion model. Now, if you have, I'd like you to tell us about it and how it got there. And I really mean that sincerely, because I'm not saying that there aren't strong inclusion models. I'm just saying I didn't see it. And I have one of my dissertation students is doing the Maryland Friend model that many of you will be familiar with as her study. And I'll be interested in the results of that. But Dale, I'd love to divert and say, somebody tell us about a strong inclusion model that you've seen and how did it work?
Well, this is what we're going to talk to Mary about. That's exactly what we're going to talk to Mary about now.
Well, she may not have seen one either.
Mary runs one.
Well,
No, now I have been in a school that had a strong inclusion model. I've also been in a school where we had inclusion, but also resource classes. Harnett County still runs resource in high school plus inclusion. What I'm in right now is not inclusion, and those kids' needs are not being met because my co-teacher works on her case files every day, all class period, and won't pull a kid to help. Goes around, do you need help? Do you understand? Yeah, no, I'm fine. Of course, every kid's going to tell you, no, I'm fine, because they're not doing the work. So that's why I emailed Dr. Lamb, and I'm like, all right, what do I need to do? Because there's going to be a problem.
Yeah. And what you do is you make the request of the teacher to teach the kids, and if they decide, I don't want to, then you send a formal email to the EC people and copy the school administration to indemnify yourself against the lawsuit when it comes, because it's going to come.
Yeah.
EC parents, the materials for tonight, the EC parents are very, very knowledgeable now. There was a time when they weren't, but they know the rules better than you do. And so they're going to advocate for their children. Now, what really sets this off is kind of like this case, and the reason I like this one so well was when Umberto came. You now have during my era, and I won't speak for Steve, but during my era, when I had complaints about EC, it was always EC parents who said their kids weren't getting what they were supposed to be getting. Now you have parents who walk in of regular ed kids and AIG kids who claim that because that these kids are preventing their child from getting a basic education. Now, part of what will happen is parents nowadays have no compunction about walking in and saying the most racist, discriminatory, derogatory, misogynistic thing, but they'll always qualify it with, I am not a bigot, racist, misogynist, and then we'll go and proceed to say the most bigoted, racist, misogynistic thing you've ever heard. But they have no compunction about coming in now and complaining. It's not the EC parents alone now. It's the regular ed parents who complain more than the EC parents now. That we don't want you providing those services or to provide them. And then you get a case like this one where the principal has completely abrogated her responsibility, and you got some teacher over there who is abusing regular ed kids, and so everybody in that classroom is being malpracticed on. The kids who are being teaching the other kids and the ones who are getting taught. This is the worst of both worlds. This is everything wrong. That's why this one is last. You're supposed to be able to identify. FERPA rules are violated when you start talking about kids. Everything, due process, everything we've touched on is wrong in this case. Finance, as Steve said, there's just not enough dollars. We didn't go to this model because it works better. We went to it because it's cheaper. And so it's hard. It's not impossible to make it work, but you have to work at it. That's the notion here, is you got to work at it if you're going to make it. It won't just work because you say, y'all go do this. You've got to be much more intentional as an administrator. And this is one of those things that even though you may not have an EC background, you're going to have to get involved in as a principal. It is the 800-pound gorilla sitting on the couch every day of the instructional program. You're going to have to get involved in EC with all your federal programs, your EC, your second language. You know, you're going to have to get involved with all these different programs, Title I, because they are such hot button issues. And then to further that level of you know, that takes it up to 11, that screen is now everybody's concerned about every program. Is this some way that they're sneaking critical race theory in the back door? You know, is that what's going on? And so we've got that as well. And so as we go down the list of all these people here in this, the IT person, generally those people, about all they can do is grunt and point anyway. They are not real, they're not real good communicators. They're a lot better with machines than they are with people. And so that would probably be the last person, either him
I
or
don't
the
want to be
janitor.
held accountable for that last statement.
Well,
If y'all please just attribute that to him.
that was me. I'll stand by that. Most IT people, they're about as, you know, they'd be about as as competent as the custodian would be to send him. It'd be about the same difference. Custodian might be a little more personable, but why in the world you would send that person who has zero people skills to begin with and doesn't know the first thing about instruction or not knowing the first thing about exceptional children? Why you'd send that person? I mean, that's kind of like, I'll show you. I mean, that's over the top kind of malpractice. And so he has no business being involved in this in any sense of the matter. The parents, the regular ed parents coming and complaining, they'll do that. Doesn't matter, you know, that they're getting more than they deserve already. That even if they are, it doesn't matter. You can't give them enough. They're gonna come and whine and complain. And if you can't give them, you know, and in my own personal experience, if I can't give them any more, they want me to take something from somebody else. If we can't have it, they shouldn't have it either. I've actually had a parent say that to me when I said, I can't put an assistant in the AG. We're already paying locally for the AG teacher. I can't give you an assistant. Well, they've got them over in EC, take theirs away from them then. Not to give to them, just we don't want them to have it. And so you're going to have that. And so, you know, the teacher, obviously the teacher has decided that, you know, the way to get by every day is just have the kids, you know, one teach the other one. That way I won't have to exert any energy. I mean, there's nothing redeeming about this case. You folks are experts in this. You know from top to bottom that this is a complete malpractice from top to bottom. The answer is, the question is, what comes next is what do we do to fix this mess? And that's what we're going to get to after we hear our second presentation of the evening. So our second presentation, you're up.
Okay, can everybody see the screen and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Give me a minute. We're not going to start with the case study because we kind of discussed that pretty much. And we pretty much agree with everything that the first group said. And so I'm just going to highlight some of our thoughts that may have not. I'm just going to highlight some of our thoughts. With the first question, how might the principal approach this in future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? The principal cannot discuss any other children with other parents unless it's their particular child. The principal needs to know what is going on in the classroom. Basically, the principal needs to do her job. She needs to get into the classrooms and she needs to observe what's going on so that she will know how to properly handle any situation that comes up. And if she's not sure, she needs to consult legal counsel at the district or someone at the district that does know. She needs to leave her office. Like I just said, the observations and walkthroughs should have been happening all along, but now because she has received a formal complaint, she is now legally obligated to do this. And the fact that she sent, you know, someone that was not prepared and and didn't know what was going on speaks volumes about who she is. Following the formal observation, she needs to have a post-conference with the teacher and to develop a plan or steps to address what was found during that observation, and address those as they relate to the parents' complaint about the students. Is one point of view more correct than the other? Why? The principal should establish, we felt that the principal should establish a culture of expectations of what should be happening in each classroom. There needs to be some professional developments, professional growth plan put in place that sets those expectations on how an inclusion model works and what it should look like. It should explain the role of the teacher and the support staff and what each should be doing in the classroom for the students. Students should not be teaching other students. Research has proven that this is not best practice. This can support SIT and SIP goals. As a school administrator, you have to fight the convenience factor. What kind of collaboration from the children's families might the principal and teachers, can't see that screen, let me move people out of the way, might the principal and teachers propose in order to improve the inclusion instruction program, encourage an appreciation for diversity, and stimulate learning for all the students at the school? We have a list of things there that kind of go along with what the first group said. But at this point, we discussed that we wouldn't recommend that they attempt to meet together. It would be suggested that all the parties meet as a whole group, maybe like, I think the group said a PTA meeting, parent night, or some kind of whole group event where this information about what the inclusion model, how the program works, can be presented to all the parents. And then after some changes at the school has been made, or within that classroom has been made, or other classrooms as well, then they can address some of the other issues. But as a principal, she's just asking for trouble. And I think the last group agreed. First group, we agree with them that they should not all meet together at this point because some changes need to be put in place and need to be occurring. I'm sorry. The principal should not host a meeting. This is what we're saying between the two groups of parents. Nothing will come from it. Maybe an open house. As an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might Ishmael, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create some harmony out of the differences in opinion among the teachers? Being that Ishmael is a technology person, he would best be used to show how to use technology in the classroom. That comes in with the differentiation as far as teaching and learning, and how to use assessment in the classroom to drive instructions for all students. He can lead those PD sessions on cooperative learning strategies, various classroom techniques, have him work with Sergio to share strategies, assist during some PLC meetings. He could be a good resource for engaging programs and online games, assist teachers in the classroom when introducing new programs. What actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experiences they have observed among the children? Sylvia's mindset of best practices needs to adjust and grow. She needs to stop allowing kids to teach other kids, introduce cooperative learning that goes along with what the first group said. Some changes need to take place within the classroom before families are invited in. We would suggest that for now, they have the whole group meeting as I was speaking of, parent informational night, PTA meetings to explain the program and how it works. The principal needs to make sure Sylvia is doing what she needs to do, best practices before inviting the parents in, and it just falls in line. The principal needs to step up or they need to get another principal. And that's pretty much our presentation. Anybody else have anything for my group to add?
Excellent.
I thought you did a great job, Phyllis. And the only thing I got to say is that when we talked about cooperative learning and maybe just teaching some different strategies that maybe she's misguided the teacher's misguided in what she's doing right now. But that she could be salvaged if given the right direction. But I don't know that Eugenia is the principal to do that because she's kind of oblivious to
She's
the whole.
not.
She doesn't know what's going on in her school.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just saying that the teacher's attempt, although misguided and incorrect, we all agreed on. I just think that, you know, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's just get rid of Eugenia and see if we can't salvage a little bit of the inclusion model that was the original intent. I don't necessarily think was to just have the kids teaching the other kids.
Yeah, yeah, that wasn't that.
Yeah,
that wasn't.
that wasn't what they wanted to do. I think that's just what
No.
ended up happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
But really, she needs to go in there and see if the parents' complaints are valid. You know,
Yeah,
if a kid's
how
coming
about
home
that?
and saying, I had to teach this other kid, you know, kids gonna say different things in different ways, and it doesn't mean the way they said it. So she needs to go in there and see what's really happening, if their points are valid.
Yeah, and you know, and sadly in this case, the teacher admitted that the kids' points were valid. Yeah, that's why I do, because I believe the best way to learn something is to teach it. Well, I didn't read that part. You folks are instructional experts, but I didn't read that part myself. You know, if they could just teach one another, we wouldn't have to have teachers.
Perhaps I'm an eternal optimist, but I think everybody can be redeemed if given the correct guidance.
Well, now I know as a Gamecock fan, you are an eternal optimist. You would have to be. 'Cause, I mean,
Right.
that's you know that's
That goes with the
common sense
territory,
and
right?
judgment. I mean, I get that. I understand.
I
But
just,
you also have to keep in mind the legal ramifications that can come about from all of
Oh,
this.
yeah.
yeah, well, and I'm not saying that I'm gonna keep that crazy teacher. I'm just saying
Right.
that, you know, if given this situation and just put it in front of me, first of all, I think the principal's the primary culprit because
Yes.
she should have already
Yes.
been in there. She should have already told that
Yes.
kid to get her ducks in a row and stop letting the kids teach the other kids. That's her issue. That being said, maybe had she not been allowed to do it for so long, unsupervised, she could have been a better teacher. I'm just
Yeah.
saying there may be some
Yeah.
redemption there.
So that's where we're going now is I'm going to start it out. The first thing we're going to do to address this case is we're going to have to move Eugenia over to the bus garage. So she's gone now. We got to do that. I mean, you can't allow this. You can't not be in the rooms. You can't not know what's going on. I mean, she obviously has no value as a school administrator. So she's now routing buses using the TIM system over to bus garage. I'm betting that ain't going to go well either. But what do I know? Oak Springs.
But she has a contract, and the
Yeah, so
contract
she's-
has an end date.
Yeah, and so she's over at the bus garage.
That's not a permanent assignment, so we need to remember that as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, administrators work on the initial contract is 2 years, and they make a decision at 1.5 years. And then your second contract would be 4 years. And that works at 3.5 years, a decision is made. They got to let you know a half year in front. So again, that when we talk about moving them over to the bus garage, I mean, I'm being facetious, but I'm not really. As Steve just pointed out, they've got a contract. We have to keep them, but we don't have to keep them at that building. And so we tend to find a place for them until their contract is up, and then they go on. Now, my wife is a curriculum instruction specialist. She's one of you people. Imagine that, me married to one of y'all. And she's such a nice person. She always asks me, well, where did they go after that, honey? I said, well, they went home. That's how it works, you know, or if they didn't go home, but they can't stay here. So that's what happens is we simply move them into a position like that until we can, until their time is up, their contract expires. Again, they have a contract. They don't have to be at that building. And so I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to remove Eugenia to the bus garage. until, until her contract is up. And so I've just appointed each and every one of you as the new principal of this building. What's your plan now? Again, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the nose. So what's your plan now? What are you gonna do? What are you going to do? You're now the principal in this building. What are you gonna do? What's the first thing you're gonna do? Establish expectation and policies, then observe. So I think you would have a faculty meeting that says, this is what the law is. This is what our policies are for our district. This is our model. And I just go right down the line. This is 94-142, established in, what was it, 1973 or 4? Steve and I were already through school, or we'd have been, that's the only reason we weren't special ed, or me, I'll just speak for myself, because they didn't have it, or I'd have been in it. I tell people all the time, I'm pretty much self-contained, or need to be. And so we would start there. What is the law? What is our district's interpretation of that law? What are we doing? Well, we're not doing a pull out. We're doing an inclusion model. What is the inclusion model? And we'd go right down the line, so we make sure everybody knows that this is what we're going to do. So I've kicked us off. We've moved Eugenia out, and we're going to do that. And so all of you are now the principal. So the first thing you're going to do is follow the law and set all those things. All right, what's the next piece? Somebody wrote it in the chat. We're going to get out in the rooms, right? That was the next thing that was in the chat. I'm just reading through your stuff here. I'm just speaking for you. So we're going to establish our expectations and policies and the law. Yep. And then after that, we're going to go to the rooms and observe. All right. And then we're going to take that walkthrough data. And if you had been with us in the second half of 601 for add-ons, the second half of 601, we do an APTEL, an applied analysis action plan for teacher leadership. We do an APTEL where at the end of it, just like you had to do in OMA Task 2, you had to have a professional growth plan. So we're going to start out with everybody knows all the laws and policies. Then we're going to get out and observe. And then in the chat a while ago, the walkthrough is, you take your walkthrough document for your district, or if you don't have one, I give our students one if we're doing that, where you go and you do those walkthroughs and you do your look fors. And from there, that's what guides your professional development. And then we'll use our 3 people here. All right, so we shared a joke this week in the MELS department. Robin sent out our joke for the week, and I want to share that with you. So we start out with best practices with Robert Marzano. Everybody knows that is the McRail, the Midwest Consortium is Robert Marzano, the 9 high yield strategies. And so they're in the traditional 601, they're at the APTEL. So Sunday, when we were doing our meetings and getting ready for Monday in our department, Robin sent this out. Let me share my screen. Move some of this stuff out of the way so I can get to it. That's from Larry. And so this was the joke for the week, that one of our students found this somewhere and my response is that ought to be the first thing you see in Ed 250, your first education course as an undergraduate, and you ought to see it every day after that. Best practices. That's what, I mean, we hold some truths to be self-evident. That's why we call them best practices. What are our best practices? Are we using best practices? Robert Marzano, are we doing that? That's why we do walkthroughs. And then from there, we build a professional growth plan. You've seen mine, MTSS for teachers. I think I've probably got it under next week. We're going to talk about it more specifically. But according to Linda Darling Hammond, the professional development guru, we regulate the amount of whole group, small group, which is PLCs, the 4, and one-on-one based on what our need is, based on what our walkthrough data tells us. Now, if 95% of the people are in the building are using best practices, should we do an all-day staff development, a whole group on that? No, we shouldn't. We should do maybe 30 minutes to remind everybody. But conversely, if only 5%, then we better do all day. And then what are we going to do in our PLCs? We're going to work on those that we don't see very much when we go out and do walkthroughs. I can tell you what the number one is going to be that you never see when you do walkthroughs is non-linguistic representation. Why can't we share some of those strategies in PLCs with our teachers? And so we're going to build that PLC component that you did in the app cell. We've built that now, and we're going to use that same PLC component to further our best practices. That's why it's the first thing we have add-on licensure students do is learn how to build. There's power in those PLCs, not only for the information that we have, but there's power in professional development as well. That's a great vehicle to break it down into small. And then after that, we're going to do one-on-one with our beginning teachers and with our low performing teachers. But this leads us, our walkthrough data is what leads us. You folks already knew this. It leads us to our professional growth plan. And our professional growth plan is customized to what we see doing our walkthroughs and what our formal observations tell us. So we're going to let Eugenia go. We're going to make sure the staff understands all the laws, policies, and those things. And then we're going to develop a professional growth plan that staff developments our teachers on the things that we're lacking on. All right, so that's the first 3. All right, somebody pick it up. What's the next thing we're going to do? What drives instruction? Always.
Data.
Assessment. Assessment drives instruction, right? And what's the biggest part of that assessment, as Mary just said? What did Mary just say? I think she said scaffolding, didn't she?
I said data, but scaffolding based on data.
But scaffolding based on data. Assessment drives instruction. Assessment gives us data. That is correct. That's what assessment, it gives us data. And from that data, then we scaffold what we want to teach. And that what we do, and that function, we call that assessment. When we say assessment drives instruction, we collect the data, either they got it or they didn't, and we figure out a way to scaffold. Okay, they didn't get this. What leads up to that? That's up here. We can't expect them to jump up there. What steps do we need to take to get them to that point where they're not getting it? That's called scaffolding. You folks know that better. It's probably a more modern term than that, but that's what I learned a long time ago. But we assess to get data, and then and if the data says they can't do calculus, well, we can't just go broach them. Do they know the background things that would be there? No, we got to figure out a way to get them there. That's our problem. Most of the time when kids aren't learning, we're trying to present things that are above the skill level they already have, the knowledge base that they already have. And we got a scaffold to get to them. Again, I can get up on the roof of this building if I have enough steps, but I'm probably not going to make it. I just got to get back and get a run and go and try to jump up on the roof. But if you'll scaffold me, I'll have I'll have a chance to do that. So we let Eugenia go. We follow the rules and the laws. We're building a professional development plan based on our walkthrough data, and then we're going to go out and collect data on what's happening now, because assessment drives instruction. We're going to go out and collect and see if it's happening. We call that formative assessment, right? We got to go out and make sure, do our fidelity checks. Is everybody doing what we told them to do? Is everybody following through with the plan now? And then we've got to set a goal where we want to be, and then what our indicator of success is. So that's how we do an action plan. So that's our action plan for the school. What have we missed? What else do we need to be doing that we haven't done? to address the issue in this case. We got to bring our community piece in, right? Because who brought us this problem? Our community did, our folks did on that. And so we've got to build ourselves a marketing plan here. All right. So Steve, I'm going to let you pick up. All right. Steve's a big believer in this, and he's 1,000% right. I hate saying anything good about him while he's here, but he's exactly right. You've got to bring your parents along. You've got to do marketing to your parents. All right. So Steve, kick us off on what we're going to do on our marketing plan to our parents here to try to patch this bad PR problem we've got. We've addressed our internals now. Now we got can't forget our external. You know, when we talk about context, remember this semester when you did the OMA, we had to talk about internal and external context. Okay, we've addressed our internal context. All right. Now we got to address our external. Steve, what are we going to do to fix this with the community?
Well, I think the communication lines we'd have to figure out best ways to get with parents. But I want to go back that when we're dealing with this, the simplistic view is that this was an exceptional children's problem, but it's not. It is a total package problem, and the voices that are often the loudest are those parents of students who just were not having their needs met, which in this case was every student, and so we're going to have to share with parents. Here's what we're going to do, and I think it does begin with. I mean, you may not have to say we screwed up, but you have to go with, here's what we're going to do going forward, without looking back so much in your communication. At least that's my opinion. That here's what you can expect, parent. This is what your child's going to get, and demonstrate to them the protocols that we're going to have in place that your child's going to get this, going to get this, going to get this, going to get this, and this is how we're going to approach it in the classroom. Here are the techniques we're going to use, and everything else, and you know how we communicate it. You know, Dale and I, you know, we're of the era where you know, you'd send a note home or something, but
Yeah.
Now with all the technology that is available, I think that you use every means you can to say these are the things we're going to do, and you certainly invite parents to come over, but we're cognizant that certainly as the child gets older, that's less and less likely to occur. So you know, we talk in here, particularly in 603, that the IEP is a contract. And it seems to me that if we're really going to gain the trust of everybody, that we're essentially saying to every parent, here's our contract with you. And I think once that is established, one thing's for sure, if we have removed the principal, then a statement has been made. And every parent knows that. So we've pretty much sounded the alarm. You know, there's changes coming. Now here's our contract with you. This is what we're going to give you. And each and every day that your child comes to this school, here is what we are going to give you. And then the next thing is to seek that kind of feedback of how are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing? You know, Dale brings up politics every once in a while, and I do as well. And oftentimes we regret ever bringing it up. But one of the things we found in the recent Virginia governor's race was the faux pas of the governor, the candidate for governor, McAuliffe, saying, you know, why should parents essentially have a voice in what the child's going to learn? And now it was probably taken somewhat out of context. If any good political campaign will do a very good job of that. but he didn't do a good job of switching the course and saying, no, I didn't say that. This is what I said. But all that being said, we parents need to have that voice. But we are on the offense because we have been the first ones to get it out there to them. Here is what we are going to do. Here's what your child's going to receive every day at this school. So, and by the way, if we do that and if we fulfill that, then we now are on the offense against homeschools, on the offense against private schools, on the offense against any kind of competitor to what we do. If we will simply do what we say we will do, we will win that battle. And I do believe that.
Excellent. Again, great point. This is really case isn't really much about EC, truthfully. It's about best practices, about what every kid's getting in that building. See, this building is dysfunctional. Yes, it was brought to light in the context of the inclusion model, but it's much deeper than that. I mean, no child is having their needs met, and faculty, they aren't doing that. And again, so we've gone through the steps that we would do. The next one, as Steve pointed out, would be communicate with the community. Now, as he said, in our era, we sent a note home. The next evidence that we have that comes after the OMA that picks up with this is our SCIP, School and Community Involvement Plan, and we do a marketing plan. And the first thing that they have to do is they have to have short-term goals of how they're going to better communicate with parents using social media. Can't use the old phone calling system anymore that did the robocalls. We thought we were in high cotton. We finally got that. That was the first technology past the note. My wife still pins the note to my shirt and sends me off to work every day. Don't feed him. He's eaten enough already. It's what my note says most every day. But the pinning the note on the kid or putting it in their book bag. And then we went to the robocalls. And so now we require that our folks figure out a way to communicate with people in their different communities within our school community using social media or their preferred method of communication, whether it be Twitter or IM or whatever, or TikTok, whatever it is. That's the first thing you have to do. And then when you have established better communication with that client system, then we need an event. We don't just have, we didn't just establish communication with them because we wanted the social part of it. Now we need to establish an event where we bring parents to our building for the purpose of, let us help you educate your child. We want to help you educate your child. You need to be a partner in it. We need to be your partner in this. You have a role in this. That again, the governor's race in Virginia, some villages missing their idiot. That guy said parents shouldn't have a role. That's exactly opposite of what we're trying to get parents to do. We want them to accept that responsibility, and we're helping you educate. Yes, you should have a role. Yes, you should have a voice. And we have events like family math night, family reading night. Get parents to come to the building for something besides a step contest or a ball game. Those don't help improve anything in our school, that maybe community spirit or something, but academically, again, we're supposed to teach kids, what they do at Jones Sausage, they make sausage. Stacy was waiting on it. She's already prompted me twice. What do we do in school? We teach kids. And so the notion here is very simple. We need to get parents in our building and involve them in that teaching. Well, if we can communicate with them better, we can get them to come in, and we do family, night. One of the best things I saw was one of my interns up at Northwest Guilford did the college fair, but they did it a little bit differently. It was basically medical in that part of the world. And they, on each desk of each company, they said, this is the degree that it takes. These are the courses that you would have to take in high school. And it really helped their students taking advanced classes, AP, IB, those kinds of things. Any of the family math night where you use, get parents in and get them involved with what's going on and put the word out. This is what's happening now. I would caution you, one of the things that we need to control that access. Parents can be a hindrance in the classroom sometimes, as some of you already know. You need to limit that. You need to have them in a more controlled environment where you've got an event specifically for them. I worry about having a lot of parents in classrooms because they tend to be competitive among themselves and cause some other issues. And so maybe that's not exactly the best idea. So it's more of a communicate and then event kind of thing, I think. But again, that's that promise that this is what we're going to provide for your child. We're going to do these things. We're going to help you. We're going to teach you how to work with your child or help you to work with your child. And that's what we do next. And that kind of closes the loop. So that's kind of what we would work through when we have a dysfunctional school. And again, yes, the vehicle for this was the inclusion model, but Steve's 1,000% right. This was a dysfunctional school for everybody. It's not just an EC problem. It's a everybody problem in this school. But this, unfortunately, there's a lot of dysfunctional schools like this. And this is basically the model that you have to work through to do this. I'm guessing that the kids aren't probably very happy either. And you know that kids can be pretty cruel in terms of how they take it out. You know, if I'm told, you know, Phyllis has to be told every day to teach me, she pretty much knows that I'm, you know, that, you know, if my IQ was any lower, I'd be inanimate like a stump or a fence post. And so nobody has to tell her that. She's figured that out. And so you create a caste system by doing that in your building. Nobody pointed that out. And that's one of the things that always bothered me about this case study is when you have one group teach another group, we're back to the bluebirds, robins, and buzzards again. We're back to ability grouping and the social stigma that comes with that kind of a caste system. You might as well wear a mark or a color or a dot. That's part of this too. So this school is pretty much dysfunctional from top to bottom. There's nothing redeemingly good about anything going on in this building. But you folks should have a notion of how I go about addressing this, and putting the things in place that I have learned. Anybody have anything else on their cases before we go to our content for the evening? I'll try to be brief. When we meet again, what's that, next Saturday? When we meet again, we're going to do personnel that day. Steve will have a big part in that. He was a personnel director at one time, but we'll talk about that and interviewing and some other things. But I want to share my screen and go through our content for the evening. I'm not going to read it to you because I know that you folks know what's going on. This top 10 for administrators and teachers, it's just basically things that you need to remember. Hot spots. This was a lady who was an EC director. Some hot spots, you know, things that you got to be careful about. Here's the website for the resources. Here's a really good pro and con on inclusion versus mainstreaming, the intervention process, and then the FERPA laws. The one thing that I wanted to look at quickly tonight, and we'll be done. And this case hits on many of these. No child left behind. Every child shouldn't have to go to a low performing school. They should have their academic needs met. They shouldn't have to go to a persistently dangerous school if it's a violent school. We talked about that last time. We have to report incidents. Where I wanted to get to this one, make sure that you observe FERPA at all time and that everybody gets due process, not just in disciplinary cases, but that in all cases that we do that. And so I just wanted to point out not all this, that there are several things from this case that are on my top 10 ways for you to get in trouble as a school administrator if you don't follow these rules. These are the things that pop up and get you. Violation of FERPA, you know, zero tolerance, doing things. These are things that won't go well for you. And so make sure that you understand that all the things that go along with EC. I know that y'all have had a class and y'all are probably more expert than us in EC. The last thing tonight is to talk about intervention. And we're going to talk more about that later on Saturday. But I do want to remind you that when a child is in the intervention process, they have the same legal protections as if they were in the EC process as well. And so the standard is a child is referred for testing. They go through 30 days of anecdotals, 30 days of the first intervention and 30 days of either the second, more of the first if it's working, and new, and if not, after 90 days we test the child to see if they place into exceptional children. We now do MTSS, which is 90 days prior to the 90 days, where we try a bunch of interventions as well. So, but what you need to understand is once a child is referred to your school's intervention team, they have the same rights as if they're in the EC program. Whether they're in the first 90 days, the second 90 days, it doesn't matter. Now you say, well, Dale, why are you bringing that up? That doesn't sound like that's real important. Here's my closing for the evening. Once a child is tested for EC, the EC department takes over the legal responsibility behind that child, you know, to do the paperwork. And even though it's a group decision at the IEP, they do all those things. Here's the difference. The school intervention team, whether we call it intervention team, care team, doesn't matter what we call it. Those are called school-based committees. That means the principal is ultimately responsible for those to follow the law and if they work or not the EC department. Now, the EC teacher or EC chair may be on your intervention team, but they are not the person responsible. You are as the school principal. You need to remember that you need, just like in our activity, you need to know what your school district's intervention policy is, where you are on that MTSS scale, and it's your legal responsibility to make sure that that's happening, not the EC department. Let me say that again. You are legally responsible for the intervention team to make sure it's happening. Those kids get the same protections as EC kids. It's your job to make sure that happens. If it goes wrong, it's not on the EC department, the chair, the CT, cooperating, you know, the cooperating teacher, or the, you know, the EC chair at the district office. No. If intervention goes wrong, if you don't follow through on what your district says those kids are going to get, that contract, what kids are going to get, that comes back to your doorstep as the principal, because the intervention team is a school-based committee. That means you're in charge. So that, again, that's the hot spot on that one is intervention teams. You got to make sure that you understand that nobody else is going to do that for you. You got to do it. And you've got to follow all the rules that your district has in place, and all the things that are supposed to be done, you have to do them. Now, everybody in elementary school understands that and gets it. The people who don't get it are the high school people. They think that once a kid gets to them, they're no longer an EC, or they're no longer need intervention or could get referred. That is not true. And that's usually where we get tripped up, is on the high school people, not following through on the intervention referrals, and the kid not getting what they're been promised in terms of the district relief for them. And so make sure you understand the intervention doesn't stop at the 8th grade. It's all the way through at every grade level. Your responsibility, everything that the district says that you're going to do, it's your responsibility as the principal to do. All right, now we're going to open up for questions. I know we've got a lot of questions. We covered a lot of things tonight, and so we'll start with our questions now.
I have one. At our school for MTSS, a big part of every child in it is that they have a mentor, but it's done on volunteer basis. So we have an assistant principal over it. If the assistant principal can't find enough mentors, what happens in that case?
If your district said that that's what you're going to give them, then you got to give them. So you're going to have to start assigning, the teacher contract says, and any other duties assigned by the principal. That's what it says. You just have to assign them, and people won't volunteer. And so when we do the OMA, one of the things that when we look at is you got to do a duty roster and a supervision schedule. You can't let people volunteer. You can't put a sign-up sheet in the teacher lounge who's going to come and supervise ball games after school. How ridiculous would that be? I've seen that done. What if enough people don't show up? Well, if you don't have enough people there, something happens, the liability is just stifling. And so it's the same thing. If your district says that you're going to have this person, then you got to have that person. You'll have to assign that. Now, if that was just a local decision at your school that, oh, this would be good, it's still, you ought to follow through. I mean, that's the ethical thing to do. But if your district, if that's written into their plan, then you're going to have to mandate people do that. Because that's what you promised them. Whatever your district said we're going to do, that's what you got to make sure happens. And if we don't have enough people, we're going to have to get us some conscripts. We'll have to tell them you're going to have to do this. And one or two things will happen. Either the district will say we're not going to do that anymore, or that will become part of the negotiation of duties, just like bus duty, car duty, student duty. It'll become part of that. It'll get subsumed into that. One or the other will happen. That's a great question. But whatever it is your district said you're going to do, you're going to do. So the question is, what about principals who delegate all those responsibility APs? That's exactly what's going to happen to you, Mary. The newest AP gets the worst jobs ever. I mean, cleaning out a chicken coop's better than some of the jobs that new APs get signed. I can tell you. You know what that's metaphor for? Shoveling. And so, I mean, that's exactly what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to do the worst bus duty. You're going to have to do discipline. You're going to have to do things like this. That AP is technician level job. Hopefully you'll be smart enough, like in bus duty. I tell mine all the time on their logs. We want to see the majority of what you're doing is leadership activities. When we give them their clinical handbook, we've got it divided into 3 sections. The longest is leadership. That's trained to be a principal. The next longest is technical. That's trained to be an AP. And then the shortest is supervision. I always tell them, I figure once, you're smart enough to figure out to wear a coat long enough to cover you behind on bus duty in the wintertime, you pretty much got bus duty's whipped if you know to wear a long coat when you're outside. If you're at least that smart, you can do bus duty. But it's that technical stuff. And these are the technical things that you're training for now, because nobody's going to get the battlefield promotion. You're not going to get to be principal next year. You're going to get to be an AP. And you're going to have all these dirty technical kind of jobs that you're going to have to do. When you get to be principal, then you get to delegate them back to the AP. That's the way it works. But yes, these are all the kinds of things that you're going to have to do. Now,
but going back to Sylvia, you said that principal needed to be in the classroom. I can't tell you the last time the principal has been in my classroom to see or know anything I'm doing.
Should be doing those walkthroughs. Now, I'm not saying that they should be camped out doing hour-long observations. It's those 5 to 15-minute walkthroughs. That's the trick. That's what we teach our administrative candidates is and Steve is big on this one. Instructional supervision, that there's not enough time to do it like people think it can be done. It's that 5 to 15 minutes that you've got to do through those classrooms. That's the trick. You got to do that. Steve, I'll let you pick up. I know that's one of yours, and it's a good one.
Yeah, well, I think the ability to get out of the office and into the classrooms is critical, and it's more so. I think that the teacher then knows that the principal knows what he or she is doing in a positive way. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's great for me to say, gosh, you're a great teacher, Mary. And you kind of sit there. I mean, I'm not sure you feel real good about that if you never saw me. So I think the beauty of each of you is that you understand that there is zero chance that the principal at any school that you're in, any one of you, can come and plop down 3 or 4 times for an hour or an hour and a half, and for you and all of these other teachers. There's no chance with all that we now know that a principal is responsible for, as well as any other position there at school. So I think this whole notion of I mean, walkthroughs sound kind of cheap. I don't know. I'm not sure that the walkthrough is a very good evaluative tool, but it is a good. It is a good communicative tool so that the teacher and principal know that each cares about the other. You know, as a teacher, I care what you think of me, principal, and as a principal, I want the teacher to know I care enough about you that I'm going to come by and see you. And so, I mean, and again, let's go back to this case. You know, that principal didn't even want to do that. And I'm you know, it's there are too many principals that are like that. I had a principal, Dale knows him, and he had it was the smallest school, and he had 9 teachers, and I couldn't, I never could get him to. I mean, he's not a principal anymore either, I don't think. But he never, he couldn't get his evaluations in. And I said, why can't you get your evaluations in? And he said, I don't have time. And I said, you have 9 teachers, 9. What do they think of you if you can't get in and observe? So this whole notion, it's about as important a thing as you can do as a principal, is to show the teacher you care enough to come in and see the teacher in action, if it's only for a short period of time. And the truth is, neither the teacher nor the principal want the principal there for a long period of time.
And there's a reason why I think I wrote in the chat, walkthroughs should be from 5 to 15 minutes. They don't want you there all the time.
No.
They got to put on a show all the time, but also we're trying to stay out of the legal realm too. If we stay more than 15 minutes, we risk it is an observation and we have to write it up. And then did we do a pre-conference? Did we do a post-conference and all that stuff? But as long as we keep it 15 minutes-ish, then we don't have to do any of that. And again, it's not for evaluative purposes. I value what you do. I enjoy seeing you. That kind of thing. You get out, you know what's going on. Again, I see what's happening with best practices, if they're being used or not. I can do those kinds of things, and I can tell what's going on in the building. I know if somebody's using best practices. I mean, you know as well as I do, and I have to explain this to our folks, it's their first time, is that you can survey for, you know, are you getting to be a teacher leader in your building, but you can't survey for best practice, because every teacher will tell you, yeah, I'm using best practices. I mean, that's an IQ test on your part, or on their part. I mean, who's going to say, no, I don't use best practices on a survey? That, of course, they'll tell you that, but you got to get out and see that. Are they using best practices again? But it's also a personal, I value you, all those things. So yes, that walkthrough, you know, that's really the power of it. That now I'll speak for me, and I believe I speak for Steve. We believe that that's the power of the instructional leadership of a principal, is the walkthrough. It is that piece. you just don't have enough time as a principal to go set hour and a half in classes on an everyday basis. That's just not going to happen. You got people who are paid to do that. So the notion of instructional leadership, we have this wrong notion that that person should be in the room all day, every day, doing observations as a principal. That's not it at all. That's not it at all. It's be in those rooms every day doing 5 to 15-minute walkthroughs. And, you know, if you divide up among and rotate among, generally you can do that in a couple hours a day at most, hour and a half, 2 hours a day. And that leaves the rest of the day to do the things that you need to do that also require attention. But we have somehow misinterpreted the notion of the principal as the instructional leader, as the person who sits in classrooms all day long and does observations. That won't work, folks. You say, well, you guys are old and you're living in the last century. That's true. We are old, but we're not living in the last century. We're trying to live in this century and be realistic about all the demands that school administrators have on them. And so the notion here is the power of the walkthrough. I think part of it is we some districts are a little smarter than me and have changed the name of it. It's not called a walkthrough anymore. I know some of you work in those, but that's what we refer to. And so I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for you to understand that as a curriculum instruction person, your instructional leadership is different than that role once you accept the administrative position. It's a different job. We might refer to it in the same terms, but it's a completely different job. And it has a completely different rationale behind it and why and reason why we're doing it. And you've got to make that adjustment. You cannot sit and do hour and a half evaluations all day, every day and be a school administrator. It just won't happen. Too many other things going on. It's a great question. Other questions you have this evening? This case was supposed to be a culmination of pretty much everything that we've covered this semester. It's a little light on discipline, but we could have brought more of that in. But it's supposed to cover pretty much everything we've got. Now, our last session on Saturday, our last content session, we're going to talk about personnel and interviewing. I'll do an interviewing session with you as well during that day on how to go about the different levels of interviews that you will be exposed to for administrative positions, how to know what they are and how to work through all those. We'll talk about personnel and we'll do that. We will not stay till 4 o'clock. We'll be done by 1 o'clock on Saturday. And then on Sunday is Steve's day, and he's going to spend his last day with you. And I'll let him talk to you about his day with TD Jakes.
So on Sunday, and this was probably of all the days, the most profound day. I'm disappointed that we're not together with, because we're going to watch a TD Jakes sermon. Most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with Bishop Jakes. He's a powerful orator, and he is going to give a rather lengthy sermon on leadership, and so our goal on Sunday is for all of us to watch the sermon, which is 90 minutes, and then we'll take a break, and then we're going to come back and discuss the sermon. Now, in EDLS, it is the final exam, and it's a written piece to kind of weave together leadership strategies and theory with what Bishop Jakes talks about. For us, it's going to be a discussion, and I hope it will be a vibrant discussion, because I think you will find that he brings up things that are while he I mean, Dale, I don't remember, he may mention a school maybe twice in the whole time. You know, it's
not about school.
It's certainly not an educational sermon. It is a leadership sermon, but we want to weave it with what we do for a living, and So I hope you will come with a kind of an expectancy that first of all, that you will reap a great deal from a tremendous human being and a tremendous orator, but also think about leadership and how these things can impact your life, not only as a school-based leader, but as a parent, as a community leader, in any role that you choose to participate in. And so we're going to have a good time with that. And we have found it to be very fruitful for us and oftentimes a very impactful day. So Sunday will be 9 o'clock and we certainly will be out, 12:30, 1 o'clock at the latest. But I hope you will come with some excitement because I think you will enjoy what he has to say. And I know Dale and I will enjoy what you have to say, because it's a really fun dialogue, and it works with Zoom. I've used it with Zoom because there've been times when we haven't been able to do face to face, but I guess from a selfish standpoint, it sure would have been fun for all of us to be together, because you can really get into some debates on some of the things, not on what he says, but how we relate it to our lives. And so we'll have a good time with it. That's Sunday. And not this coming Sunday, but a week from Sunday.
That's correct. So we will see y'all at 9 o'clock on Saturday. Pull out my calendar here. Saturday, the 20th of November, we will do our final 603 content on interviewing and personnel. And then on Sunday at 9, from 9 to 1 p.m., 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., we will do our TD Jakes and leadership. And so until then, you've made it. Lee said you can't believe you made it. You've made it. Just work on your work. We still got until mid-December to get your work in. So make sure you do. All right, Jennifer, you have a question? Everybody, good night. Jennifer's got a question.
There we go. Okay, so this one was, I just kind of needed to know to make sure that I think we're going in the right direction. Had a teacher, didn't show up he didn't show up to work. We didn't know anything. We tried to contact and we didn't know what was going on. Ended up, finally, there was some text messages that had come across. We were concerned for his safety, sent somebody out to his house. Officer didn't want to leave him kind of alone. And then finally he got in touch with our principal after the principal called several times. And then he said he was going to seek some help, and they were using like the employee services or whatever. 'Cause we didn't know if it was, yeah. And so we were like, okay, that's good. But then I get a text message later, and I told my principal about it because he's in my department, and said that he was on his way to New Jersey to go to a rehab facility, and that he would be out for 30 to 45 days. And so my principal and because I asked him, I said, I don't know what this is, but all he said was that maybe he could take the FMLA. But I'm thinking, I don't even know if he can take, because all he had was a conversation with the principal. There was nothing in writing. The only kind of written anything is in this text message. We don't know if it's a drug alcohol rehab facility. We don't know if it's for depression. Have no idea. Can they file at the district for FMLA if there's no written communication from that person to the district office?
Okay, that's one of our weekly assignments is to find out what EAP is in your district. That now they vary greatly from district to district in terms of what the promise is. Now, if he is under the auspices, if he has contacted them and they have and brought him in and interviewed him and put them under their umbrella, he can avoid being terminated for job abandonment. Now, you understand that you're in North Carolina, and so North Carolina is a right to work state. If you miss work 3 days in a row and don't show up, they can terminate you for job abandonment. Some places it's 5. North Carolina, it's actually 3. Now, I worked in one district where they would give them the 5. I worked in Charlotte, Mecklenburg. We only gave them the 3. And so if he has not registered and it has not been accepted into the employee assistance program, there's no nothing other than he'll be terminated. It's just that
So
simple.
that's what I was thinking. So if my principal called and he left a message for HR, but HR never called him back yet. And he and I spoke today and I said, I think you need to call back because this is something you need to know.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to follow up on the fact that if he hasn't called you back, we need to know what to do next because, if he called, the employee service, but I don't understand why he would be going to New Jersey. But as long as he's called, then possibly something can be done. But if he didn't really call and he just left on his own, then we're out of luck.
No. If he is registered with employee assistance and he's taking leave, you get a substitute. You can hire a substitute, you can get one. If he did not register with them after 3 days, he's terminated. If he
Okay.
just decided to abandon his job after 3 days, he's terminated, you can hire a sub then as well. So either way, and I've had both to happen. I had a young lady who did 6 months in rehab. But I was able to get a long-term sub because now she went through the district and did a 6-month rehab. But then I've had folks who didn't show up for a week, and on the 4th day I fired them because they didn't, I checked with employee assistance. Have you heard anything? Nope. Well, then, I've got to move on. I've got to have somebody. So either way, you get some relief, but you can't just assume that it's okay for him to be gone. Either
Right,
he's
and
under EAP or he's not. If he's not, he's just abandoned his job.
And that's why I told him, I said, even if that was the case and he's going somewhere else, but if he never actually made that phone call and then he's not going to have his phone for 30 to 45 days, that leaves us in a pickle.
Yeah.
And I said, you need to know where he physically is to be able to know if he communicated or not. So but the employee service assistants, they can actually tell our principal, yes, they contacted or no, they didn't, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I was just making sure. So even if he said, hey, I'm going to this program, because I was like, I don't know. They probably couldn't say other stuff because of FERPA, but they could say, yes, he contacted or no, that he didn't.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
No, you got to check with your employee assistant. Did this person come and register with you? It's either yes or a no. If it's a yes, and he's now seeking treatment, we're still going to get it. We're going to get a sub. If he did not, we're going to get a sub and we're going to fire him, and then we're going to find a new teacher in 3 days.
Perfect.
After 3 days. So either way, but you got to find out whether he's involved with EAP or not.
Okay.
But we complain how bad we treat teachers in North Carolina, but this is one of those cases where I wish teachers had more rights, but this is one of those cases where in a right to work state that the good thing is you don't get hung up in the unknown for an extended period of time because of the rules in the right to work state. Steve, you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm glad you said what you said. The EAP is one of the blessings we have. And most districts do that pretty well now.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, that's it. But yeah, you have recourse either way. But you can't sit around and wait. You got to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
And I've had multiple cases both ways, unfortunately. And then the one that, and the problem you're going to get into, and this is down the road, and I'll go so everybody can go home tonight. When they do rehab, if they come back and they relapse again, it resets the clock, which is, I don't mean to be heartless, but boy, I tell you that, because when they're in rehab, you can only do a long-term sub or an interim. You can't replace them. And then if they come back and they violate again, you got to take them. I mean, you generally have to take them to get drug tested pretty regularly if that's the reason they were out. And if they violate again, pardon?
That was my other question. If that's the case and that was indeed what he went for, will there be accountability to make sure that it's not happening again? Will there be like regular drug tests and things
Every
like
Monday.
that? Okay.
Every Monday for a certain period of time, then it becomes every other Monday, and then once a month. I mean, that's part of the agreement to not terminate these people, is that they have to agree to, it's not random, they have to agree to a testing schedule when they come back. The problem is when they violate again, they go out. But now if they violate, they get one. So the person says, I'm going to rehab. Okay, we under EAP. They go to rehab. Let's say we'll just use around. They go for 30 days. They come back at 30 days. They got to get tested every Monday. The second Monday after they're back, they violate again. They got to go back to rehab. This time they'll have to go back for longer. That's the way it works. They'll have to go back for 2 months this time. Now, when they come back after that one, if they violate again, they're out. It's third time you're done. And I went through that with a crack addict, unfortunately, in Charlotte. And so we went through that, and it took me right at a year, because she went, came back, violated, went again. And crack is a longer period of time than other drugs, or they make you stay longer. But when she violated that second time, then it was, and so you again eventually going to have some recourse one way or the other. Either they're going to get better, or if they violate that second time after they've been to, they get to go to rehab twice. After that, that's it. There is no more rehab. You don't have to continue with them. That's the way it works for everybody.
Is it same way with alcohol or just
Yeah,
drugs?
same way with alcohol. If they're going to rehab.
Well, what about, through the employee assistance program? I was just curious about the testing part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we take them. You take them on Monday, and they blow in the breathalyzer, and they do a blood test on Mondays.
I didn't know if it was the same in South Carolina as North Carolina.
Yep, it is. Just like somebody this week was talking about the budget. I think I sent them the title. That where budget has to be public, the school budget. Who was that I sent that to this week?
You had sent it to me in one of my posts.
Yeah, I think I sent that. I think this is South Carolina. I want to know if it was the same in South Carolina, and it is. I think it was Ann in Charleston. But yeah, and so pretty much what you're going to find is they're organized. My point is they're organized differently. North Carolina spells everything out. They have 545 statutes. South Carolina does them in titles, and they have a lot more subsections. And so there's only like 160 titles in South Carolina. They have the same thing. It's just not, you can't find one. It doesn't make sense. The lookup doesn't, but yeah, pretty much everything in South Carolina is a right to work state as well. So the rules are exactly the same. Now, if you said Florida, that's a completely different story, because Florida is a union state. And so, but
my mother-in-law worked in Florida so I knew there was.
Oh yeah, that's the one that everybody compares. You can't compare to Florida. North and South Carolina are pretty much, their governance systems are pretty much the same. They want to pretend like they're much different, but they really aren't. The title system very much, replicates or mirrors the general statute system in North Carolina. But yes, both being right to work states, the EEOC stuff is exactly the same. Yes. Good questions. All right. We still finished early, 9 minutes. I can't believe it. That almost never happens. 8 minutes, I'm sorry. We finished 8 minutes early. All right. We'll see y'all Saturday week. Everybody be safe. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Not everybody.
All right.